Welcome to our channel, Gray Matters. We are two neurodivergent ladies who fixate and need to share, and we've created this channel to do just that. Check out our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, for some deeper dives. Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. What we wanted to do today was to revisit one of our, I believe our first video about the Mica Miller case. It's called Mica Francis Miller, the Hero. Coincidentally, it came out today. We are recording. It is September 7th. We released this video a year ago on September 9th. So just funny timing. That was not planned. What we wanted to do was kind of revisit this video and talk through it together to see if we were on the right track with anything, if any of our opinions or views or thoughts about what was going on has changed in this year that we've been covering this case.
Yeah. So this was our first theories back a year ago. Just basically taking a wild stab at what we thought might be going on.
All right.
Let's take a look back.
All right.
Our focus in this case is primarily about the circumstances in which Mica was living at the time she lost her life. It is widely accepted that JP was incredibly abusive to Mica, took advantage of his position as the church leader for personal and financial reasons, and was using the nonprofit status of the church to avoid paying taxes. Could JP's greed have led to involvement in criminal activities that went far beyond this? Had he got in way over his head and became part of a large-scale organized crime ring? We believe the focus.
Yeah, what do you think? I think we were right that if JP is involved in anything, he is not as important as he wishes he were.
Yeah,
He's
I think at that time, I think we were probably the only people at that time talking about it who jumped to organized crime.
Yeah,
Um, but I still think we are right.
I do too.
We believe the focus on the loss of Micah's life has been overshadowing a much larger criminal network that JP may have been involved with. All right, Micah so no longer- I actually put this clip in because I was not happy with the way I said this, and uh, I said at the time that I thought that her death was overshadowing the other activity, and I feel like that may have come across as insensitive. And you know what? Obviously, this case is about her death, and using the word overshadowing was inappropriate for me. Mica could no longer take the abuse and wanted nothing to do with the horrific crimes being committed around her. She wanted out of the whole situation, but knew too much, and understood that getting away from this life would be extremely dangerous due to the things she had witnessed. Maybe a member of a federal agency investigating a major organized crime ring approached her to become an informant and collect evidence. We believe that there are two layers to what we have been seeing unfold in this case: the loss of Mica's life and JP's inappropriate way of announcing it to his congregation caught the attention of the world in a way nobody anticipated. Mica?
Yeah, I've always and still feel like there are two things going on. I think she was fleeing an abusive situation. I also think with that comes fleeing things that she was very uncomfortable being around or seeing or knowing about.
Yeah, definitely think we've said from the beginning that we think there's two layers. I think back then, yeah, you definitely were very focused on um, the her abuse and their marriage in that way. I think I became at that point a little bit more obsessed about what he had gotten them both into and the
Yeah.
danger in that way. So,
Yeah.
all right. Mica was compiling evidence about the criminal activities of JP and others in their circle, possibly as leverage to get away from it all and to expose the evil that was happening. We think Mica was not only a victim, but also a hero who may have saved countless others at the expense of her life. If we are correct, she was extremely brave and selfless, and as such, will be celebrated as one someday. Her bravery, along with extensive federal investigations, will hopefully lead to many bad people being arrested for their unspeakable deeds and many victims being freed. The rapid involvement.
Okay, I think that this is a huge point that we wanted to drive home. And
Yeah.
we were talking, I believe all the discussion going on at this time was um about her victimhood and about her loss of life. And I think it was very important to us to turn it around because we thought that she was doing some really brave things and really trying to, that she was involved in gathering evidence of some sort um, to help the case.
And even simply the fact, if we took that stuff even off the table, simply the fact of attempting to leave the situation she was in is incredibly brave.
True.
It's heroic to save yourself.
Yeah. No, agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
The rapid involvement of the FBI was the biggest indicator that something much bigger was going on. But other pieces started to be revealed, such as JP's comments about Micah's use of the term, quote, double agent, the discovery that JP was a partial owner in a bar called Crocodile Rocks, the revelation that he often brought bags of cash home or to his church from the bar, and the use of the canine unit when police searched church, which are typically used to expose drugs or cash.
I think this was really important because I think these were the little clues that we had at the very beginning, and
Hmm.
we were like piecing them together. But I think we were really on the right track from those little clues at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And we've really, I think, leaned into more that JP's very selective in how he speaks. Everything means something else. And, we've always said that that bags of cash comment was a big deal. And I don't even think we've driven home how big of a deal it is. Like, because it's a
Yeah,
big deal.
I agree 100%. From the very start, the FBI being so involved so quickly. It
Hmm.
was more. It had to be more. Those canines really got to me. They
Yeah,
had to
they
be
did.
searching. They had to be searching for something. I just couldn't get over the canines.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, still like the Crocodile Rocks thing and him being an owner.
Yeah.
Um, but actually, if you looked into it, he wasn't an owner on paper, so it kind of didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if we knew it at that time. I don't think we even at that time knew that different level that he was never really listed as an owner anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, bags of money, quick FBI and being so involved so quickly. I still don't understand the double agent comments that he kept making. He did that a lot when he was on the
Yeah.
News Nation, but it was weird. Something stuck out to me about that he would,
Yeah.
and I guess he kept saying that Micah used the word double agent when she was in her manic modes, and I feel like he was giving something away there. I just don't know what exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I still don't know.
The puzzle pieces have come together and led us to our belief that this is a much larger case than the public has been led to believe. It seems like money laundering may have been the most likely reason which would explain these suspicious happenings. However, since the FBI was involved, it suggested that money laundering went way beyond the scope of just the fraud happening at the church. It opened up the possibilities that JP had entered a much higher crime organization. So
I
what
think
is
at
money
this point we believed primarily that he had he was using the tax exempt status of the church and maybe using it to bypass paying taxes, um, and possibly at that point, yeah, then bringing money over from Crocodile Rocks. I think at that point we still even thought, like, was it just to avoid taxes, or
Yeah.
was that?
Yeah, I think we thought it was all about money
Mhm.
and not so much about power. And I
Yes.
do still think that it's financial, of course, but I think we weren't considering um how highly JP thinks of himself.
Yeah. Yeah, and how big of a mess he may have gotten himself involved with,
Yeah. Just a
stealing, from the church and the church coffers. I think he thought he could outsmart, he thought he could get away with more and more, and then, yeah, he got in over his head.
yeah.
Crocodile Rocks is largely a cash only business, and often churches are also. Who introduced JP to these opportunities? Well, we have a pretty good guess that we will get to a bit later.
Okay, that was a quick clip because, I think that's where we kinda threw out the who we thought, may be central figure. We didn't say at that time, but I was thinking Mark Kaufman.
Yeah. At first I was like, wait, I can't remember who we thought it was. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought Mark Kaufman was, like, the big guy in this whole thing. Now I think there's a
Yeah.
lot more above Mark Kaufman.
Yeah.
Um
I think Mark Kaufman has a bigger role.
Mhm.
But I think he's a link in the chain.
So, how did JP become the despicable man he is? I would say his father, upbringing, and the lack of education beyond the scope of the church. However, JP has been blessed with charm and an uncanny ability to memorize and quote the Bible, which he uses to manipulate people of faith who are seeking a greater purpose and meaning of life. He is also a talented musician, which doesn't hurt. At this point, he was just an evil man who used his authority to abuse his wife and fleece his congregation of believers.
This
He had
is
grown up.
this is still a big one for me. Um and I think our phone call with him completely confirmed it. He manipulates scripture to
Yes.
uh try to manipulate people. In the phone call we did with him, he uh first, and this is my favorite. I say this to my pastor all the time. He said that my pastor's teaching wrong. Um I'm not understanding the Bible and what the scripture says, and it really says this and it means this. And basically, what he did pretty quick was pick up on that I am a Christian who loves Jesus, but is a wackadoo leftist feminist. And he picked up on that real quick and then tried to change the meaning of scriptures to try to convince me of that.
See, I think you completely overwhelmed him by what you
Yeah,
knew
I
and the
did.
big words and the big words you used. And I think he knows what he speaks and how. And I think he can memorize scripture really well, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he can project it and show emotion and how he conveys it. But I don't think, yeah, I think you just showed him knowledge, and that made him uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think so too. Listen, I don't pat myself on the back a lot, but I think I'm smarter than JP Miller.
I think you are too.
He had grown up in this area and built lifelong friendships, as well as trust and admiration of others that can only be achieved through generations. He is a bad guy who figured out how to work the system and used control to abuse his wife and keep her quiet about his dealings. Then along came
Okay, so here I take a big leap that I think people may have a hard time with that. So I think we're talking about cartels, criminal cartels, if I'm honest.
Mhm.
That's extreme. But the reason I believe this is because I think cartels have changed their way of doing things. They
Okay.
have to adjust and evolve as the authorities come down harder on them. And I think they are utilizing these small towns of people who are exactly that. They trust each other. They know each other. They can, I went to high school with the police officer, so I can, kind of get by with that. And I know this guy's an attorney, but he's a little bit shady or whatever. I do
Yeah.
think utilizing these small towns more to move their product or whatever it is. I also think
Yeah.
that this activity had always been kind of focused on Florida, and I think
Mhm.
again, as authorities, things became tougher. They've moved up the coast, and
Yeah.
South Carolina still has the access, but it's not under as much scrutiny.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Then along came COVID. Many segments of the economy suffered during 2020 and 2021, including churches. Regulations, which were meant to minimize people congregating, especially indoors, impacted many churches financially. Restaurants and bars were obviously also impacted by COVID regulations. Craig Smith, a fellow co owner of Crocodile Rocks, even spoke out to the media about the need for lifting some of the regulations that had been put in place for people's safety. Could it be that both entities needed supplementary income at this time to make the money they needed to support their lifestyles? We know that outward appearances of wealth, success, and power were extremely important to JP. More importantly, JP had to maintain his dominance in his marriage and not admit weakness. Desperate times led to desperate measures.
All right, what do
One
you think?
thing.
Any key points here?
I think so much of how JP portrayed himself in his marriage. So if we keep in mind that JP met Micah when she was 14, day one, grooming is starting. And so if, he's getting involved in these things, I think his hope was that he had enough control over her that she would not be interested in looking at anything outside of the facade he had. It's not her job to care about what happens outside of their marriage or their church. She doesn't have to worry about those things. And I think when she started speaking up more and maybe recognizing the things that she wasn't comfortable with and speaking out is when he started feeling that loss of control in terms of the marriage, not even necessarily the things he was doing, but I think that's probably 2021, 2022ish that we talk about as such a pivotal time that she started saying, I'm not okay with this.
Yeah, no, I agree. At the beginning, I did talk about uh, 2021 and COVID and that causing the financial strain on his church and on Crocodile Rocks. I don't even know. I don't know if that was it as much as I mean, I think that's part of it. I think it also slowed down business so they couldn't hide things going on as
Hmm.
easily. I also think that there was a lot with COVID, like the PPE loans.
Yeah.
And I think there was probably some stuff going on with that. Again, like this is not that I'm saying they directly did that, but I
Right.
think again, money laundering, you're laundering money from all different kinds of corruption. And I do know actually a fairly big case broke out there. What came FBI announced it, and it had to do exactly with that corruption around those
Yeah.
loans. So I think that all could have been in as part of that. the Craig Smith, the co-owner of Crocodile Rocks, I think he plays a much bigger role. I think nobody has really
Yep.
talked about him. We haven't talked about him that much because we don't know that much. But,
Yeah, I can't find anything besides the clip that we talked about, that he's saying that the restrictions need to get lifted. I can't find anything.
I think but I just can't help but think that he's kind of maybe it's like, here we go, like JP, then we think of like kind of Mark Kaufman, sort of maybe a link in the chain, and then above him, and then I feel like maybe Craig Smith is the link in the chain above that as we, work our way back or up.
Yeah. A Crocodile Rocks MLM.
One thing JP had was respect in the community and trusting relationships that he had built with friends over his lifetime. In future videos, we can address his friends and business associates who may have also been involved. We noticed in 2021, it seemed like mayhem surrounding JP's life significantly increased. We started hearing more about his mistreatment and abuse of Mica, as well as increased discussions from JP about her so called mental illness, including involuntary hospitalizations to mental health centers, which were initiated by JP. We learn about Mica being isolated from friends and family, JP's obsession with forcing medication on her, and JP's sermons becoming more unhinged and seemingly targeted at his wife. JP's
This just occurred to me that we're talking about two things being true, right? Like the marriage part of it and the criminal ring, whatever we think it is. I also think two things can be happening at the same time in how he's preaching, that I do think a lot of what he was saying was directly aimed at his wife and it wasn't secret. But we've always said we think he's maybe talking to somebody else while he's preaching. Is he doing both? At the same time, he's sending Micah a message, but also sending somebody a message.
I so correct me if I'm wrong. 2021 is when these forced hospitalizations started, correct? Or were there any before that?
There was not any before that. And I think it was 2022.
Okay, so that didn't start right away. Okay. I don't
Yeah.
know. I just question like why they started then. Was it that I guess was he starting to lose control at that point? Um
That's exactly what I think it is.
just there's
She
changes
was
in their
starting
marriage
to
and
speak up more. Yeah.
yeah. Or again, I think maybe he was starting to get involved in more activity that and he either wanted to keep her away from it or convince her she was crazy and not seeing it.
That's keep her complacent and compliant.
at his wife. JP's so called intimate relationship with Susie Skinner begins, and the suspicious death of her husband, Chris Skinner, are also key moments in 2021. During all this, JP becomes more involved at Crocodile Rocks and inexplicably becomes a partial owner.
Okay, I know Susie's controversial, and I'm not. When I say I don't think the romantic relationship started at that point, I'm not saying I don't think a relationship started then. I think maybe with whatever was going on, somehow or not another, she got involved in that.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like they almost used an affair as a cover. Maybe I'm thinking way too deeply about that. I've just always thought like this woman who took care of, this paraplegic man, fell in love with him after his accident. This just doesn't strike me as a woman who then turns around and has an affair. When Chris said, "Stay away from my family," we assume that means because they're having, an intimate relationship, but maybe it means stay away because he's pushing her to get involved in some activity that's illegal.
Yeah. And I'm more of the mind that I do think there was a romantic, some sort of entanglement. But I think it can be both. Chris's sister has spoken out quite a bit. Um, and it sounds like there was some caregiver fatigue, to say it lightly. Um, and a lot of people have said, and we've said it, JP can be very manipulative and coercive and persuasive. Um, and that some people felt like she was behaving almost like she was in a cult around that time. Um, so we can also see, if there was something, regardless of what it is, if we take that as truth, that she kind of felt like a different person a bit, it kind of goes with the pattern that JP can find people's almost weaknesses and manipulate them.
Yeah, that's very definitely true. And obviously, they are married now. Um, Again, little part of me thinks that has to do with, you know, immunity from testifying against one's spouse. So I don't know if we'll ever know. So.
Yeah.
More about buying, selling, transferring of lands, homes, and businesses by JP and several of the people around him, and see the accumulation of a large number of vehicles in the church's name. Throughout the year 2021, signs of JP's paranoia become more and more evident. It is critical that all of this is happening in South Carolina, which is considered one of the most criminal-friendly states in the country due to legal loopholes and law enforcement corruption, which we will explore more in future video.
A lot of things have to align for all of this to have happened, and the biggest thing that has to be that they're in South Carolina. I think it's the same for them for the Murdaugh murders. Um, South Carolina lets a lot of things fall into place for people to be bad.
Yeah, and I think that could go up to politics, political
Yeah.
corruption, and creating laws. Yeah, at the beginning we talked about how weirdly coincidental is that the Murdaugh thing happened in South Carolina and then this. I don't think it was completely coincidental. Actually, I think
Mm-mm.
very similar things were happening, which we'll have to get into later when we get into Murdaugh. But also the where Myrtle Beach is and where Murdaugh lived. I can't remember what it was called. We're not far from each other, and both
Yeah.
were on rivers. There was a lot of similarities, but
Yeah.
it's not coincidence. And you're right; there is a certain amount of lawlessness or corruption that I think comes from
Yeah.
these like good old boy networks of people who have been,
Yeah.
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 And it's that charm ability too.
Yeah.
Murdoch was
Well,
a
and then I was
charming
just going
guy
to say, kind
too.
of, he sure was.
Hmm.
But kind of going back to the good old boy thing, part of that is your submissive wife not getting too involved or asking questions.
In both cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
A report showed in 1 year more than 3,000 businesses operating in Horry and Georgetown counties, who in total wired $700 million to a host of unsavory organizations, including Mexican and Colombian drug cartels and Middle Eastern terrorist organizations. Myrtle Beach is the center of much of this activity. So, what if JP had been lured or at least introduced to this facet of organized crime around 2021 when money could be tight from the COVID restrictions? Could he have been in way over his head, and might his other transgressions and ignorance not only exposed himself but also his colleagues? This case has garnered headlines throughout the country and gathered web sleuths, as JP calls them, from across the world to scour through the evidence in an effort to make sense of this case. We think it is probable that in addition to JP's abuse, stalking, stealing from the church, and many other criminal behaviors, he may have been cocky enough to move on to the big boys table. His behaviors and carelessness could possibly have implicated dozens of friends and co-conspirators in a larger criminal enterprises, answering to even more ruthless and powerful players, where the stakes are very high and they don't mess around when it comes to protecting themselves. Most of the time.
Unfortunately, at this point in the recording, we started experiencing some technical difficulties, and my side of the audio and video was lost. So from this point forward, you will notice a lot less commentary. We had the video from Nikki's side, which I'm going to go ahead and try to use, but it sounds a bit awkward since she's talking to herself.
Most of the time, with crime at this level, those involved are committing other types of crime as well, especially drug and human trafficking. Could this explain why the FBI got involved so quickly? Could this explain the reason the local police and authorities have not been forthcoming with the public? Could JP have been so overconfident in the abilities he had perfected all of his life from stealing from Solid Rock to think it was time to up his game? Could he have become a minnow in the big sea of organized crime? Could Mica have figured this out and want no part of it? Could her divorcing JP have led to a closer look into their finances, which would uncover his financial transgressions? This is a lesson that JP took from his first divorce, as well as his parents' divorce. Divorces lead to information being made public record. Could Mica?
I think we got wrong what the actual impact of the divorces would be. I think it's more about losing members, therefore losing money. He's watched it happen with his dad, and then it happened with his divorce from his first wife. They lost members. Mica was beloved at that church, and she already wasn't being quiet. She was posting on social media. Losing members is losing money.
While I don't disagree with Nikki's thoughts here, I do still believe that a fear of their financial information being made public from a divorce played a role in how this all played out.
Could Mica's sense of values and morality led to her reporting this behavior at a federal level that would expose not only him, but also those in his inner circle? Could Mica have lost her life as a result of JP's greed and struggle for power? Could this explain why JP has not already been arrested for the crimes he openly admitted to? There are so many more questions to ask. We believe when you factor in other activity happening in the country at that time, we will expose unspeakable criminal activity that they may have been part of, or at least adjacent to. We are talking about heinous crimes, and that will help us understand just what a hero Mica was.
I think it's really cute that we said that we would expose all of this. Our tens of people.
We should never lose sight that the life of an innocent woman is the true tragedy. Mica was a daughter, a sister, a friend. We sincerely hope that they feel like the online attention this case has garnered is in good faith seeking justice. Please join us as we analyze the case and bring attention to South Carolina's legal system's inadequacies in both the financial sector as well as the protection of women from systemic abuse. Hopefully, this tragic loss of life can bring awareness and change and save lives in the future.
You know, it's remembering that a life is just as important as any other life, and keeping our focus on the desire for justice, I think, for everyone. And I don't think we'll ever be done following this case, and I don't think we'll ever be done making content about the case when things start happening, or however, I guess whatever kind of ending we come to. We're still going to be talking about it, but it's time to move on to another big topic. And we will, I guess, always be coming back to this case when there's more to talk about. Yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye. Thank you for listening. Please comment, like, and subscribe. You can also check out our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, for more content. Have anything you'd like us to fixate on? Reach out and let us know. Thanks for joining us. Disclaimer: we are not investigators, journalists, detectives, law enforcement, or historians. We are two neurodivergent ladies who just hyperfixate. Please do not take our opinions and ideas as statements of fact. All allegations are just that. We are not accusing anyone of anything, simply offering our interpretation of what we've researched.